Morning church, it's Anna. It's so nice to be with you again today. So we've had our reading, which is from Genesis 21, verses 8 to 21. And we're just going to explore it just for 5 minutes with our title, which today is God's Plans Incorporate People's Mistakes. So what do we see in this passage? Well, we have some familiar players. It talks about Isaac and Abraham and Sarah in the first sentences. Who are they? So we know Abraham from the stories of the Old Testament. We know that he's a man that God promised a lot to. He promised 3 main things. He said, number 1, I will bless the people of the earth through your family. Number 2, I will give you a huge, huge family. And number 3, I will give them the promised land. So Abraham is the patriarch of the family of Israel. He's a key player in the story of the Bible. And Abraham has a wife called Sarah. They've been married for a long time. And the promises that God has made to them involve a big family. And you'd have thought that the next thing to do would be to have some children. But Abraham and Sarah could not have children. They waited for decades and decades and nothing happened. So what happened in that story with Abraham and Sarah? Do you remember someone called Hagar? Hagar was Sarah's slave woman. And at one point in the story, Sarah has given up hope that she could be the one to have Abraham's child. But she knows that he needs to have one to fulfill the promises of God. So she says to Abraham, go take Hagar and have a child with her. And that's what happens. Abraham and Hagar have Ishmael, and Abraham loves his son. Then fast forward a couple more years and Sarah finds herself pregnant because the Lord promised that she would. And she has a son with Abraham and they name him Isaac. And today's passage, it's at a feast, a celebration for Isaac. And what do we see here? We see Sarah say something very drastic. Now the title of our talk incorporates mistakes. We don't know from this story whether having Ishmael was the mistake or sending him away was the mistake. But what we do see in the first couple of verses is Sarah being confronted by the regret she has over the events that have happened in her life so far. We see she's holding her son and she says to Abraham, get rid of that slave woman Hagar and her son Ishmael, for that woman's son will never share the inheritance with my son Isaac. As I said, we don't know what the mistake is here, and I'm not going to pronounce that it was having a child, but something has gone wrong, something is not right, something is full of human messiness in this story. So Sarah says to Abraham, you need to send Ishmael and Hagar away. And this distresses Abraham a lot. He loves his son. But God says to him in verse 12, do not be distressed about the boy and your slave woman. Listen and do whatever Sarah tells you, because it is through Isaac that your offspring will be blessed. I will make the son of the slave, Ishmael, into a great nation, because he is your offspring. Let's just remember, God's plan and his promise to Abraham was to make him a great nation, a father of many nations. And what do we see here? We see one nation will come out of Isaac and one nation will come out of Ishmael. God is still keeping his promise. He's keeping to the plan. And we see this further. Hagar, the slave woman, the mother of Ishmael, takes her son away and they wander through the desert. And they get to a point where they're hungry and they're tired and Ishmael is crying and Hagar is worried that he might die. And the angel of the Lord comes to Hagar in verse 17 and says, what is the matter? Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy crying. Lift up the boy and take him by the hand, for I promise I will make him a great nation. What we see here is God incorporating people's mistakes, their humanness, the messiness of humanity, into his plan. He planned to bless Abraham. He planned to bless the nations through Abraham, and he planned to make nations from Abraham. And we see that playing out here in this passage. I just want to take a moment now to just close and thank God that he is such a huge and loving and merciful God that he can still work his plans through us, these messy ones, and that he is not daunted by our mistakes. Instead, he incorporates them, embraces them, and makes them into his plan.